Months later, Steve Deace is a native Iowan who has outlined his opening odds for each of the 2016 candidates if the Iowa caucuses were held today. Steve is the author of the book, Rules for Patriots, How Conservatives Can Win Again. And Steve, as always, we appreciate you taking time out to join us here on America's Forum.
Good to see you guys again. Appreciate it.
Well, Steve, it looks like there are going to be a whole lot of Republicans running and maybe not too many Democrats. How would you set the field? How many total Republicans do you think we'll see, and how many on the Democratic side?
I think there's at least 15 Republicans that would like to run. I don't think all of them will, but it wouldn't surprise me if more than half of that number did. On the Democrat side, obviously, you've got a coronation waiting in line here for Hillary Clinton. Then you have Governor O'Malley, who would like to run, maybe a couple of others as well. But I suspect that what you will see in the Democrat field, maybe Howard Dean wants to run. What I suspect is you're going to see a glorified coronation on the Democrat side. And then I think the Republican side, guys, is going to be a battle royale, an absolute free-for-all, and I can't wait for it.
Well, in 2012, you correctly predicted the top 5 finishers in order in the Iowa straw poll. So we want to know, what's your secret?
Well, I think the secret is I just know a lot of the people that make the key decisions here. I don't have a magic 8-ball, a crystal ball. I can't see into the future. I'm not a soothsayer. It's just a matter of good old-fashioned journalism, working sources, and then listening to what people are actually telling you and not trying to actually create news based on what you want the truth to be. And that's why I'm telling you folks right now, believe me when I say this, everybody is underestimating Dr. Ben Carson at their own peril. I just emceed an event for the largest conservative group in Iowa 2 weeks ago, and he was the featured speaker. It was maybe the largest crowd I have ever seen of Iowa activists at one event ever. And absolutely, they loved him, no doubt about it. He is going to be much more of a force than even I thought he was going to be.
Well, now you're making news here based on what you saw with Dr. Carson, who has been a frequent guest on this program. A guest with us yesterday to open our program was former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. You supported him early back in 2008. Are you inclined to support Huck again, and what are his odds this time around?
Well, I think Mike, to borrow a betting term, is the morning line favorite going in and should be, and I count him as a friend. But in this election, a lot of us that consider ourselves grassroots conservatives, JD, we really think this is an existential crisis moment for the country. And I think what we really need to do is set aside personal relationships and find one candidate that does the best job of rallying the conservative grassroots so we can finally beat the establishment in one of these national primaries for the first time since Reagan and offer the country a choice it really hasn't had the last 10 years in presidential elections. So while Mike will certainly be on that list, I think what's really more important than ever before is that we do not split our votes amongst 3 or 4 or 5 different candidates. We wait for a milquetoast corporatist establishment candidate to take advantage of that and then lose the general election because he doesn't rally the base and can't win the middle class. Wash, rinse, repeat. The country is literally at stake this time. We cannot afford to do that. We need to find a true conservative standard bearer that coalesces the grassroots.
Steve, let's talk about another contender, Ted Cruz. What are the odds of him winning?
I think Ted Cruz is similar to Ben Carson in that they are the 2 candidates that could create almost a force of nature if they play their cards right. I mean, Cruz can rally that conservative grassroots without changing anything about him right now. He's one of the few Republicans who will run for president that if they walk through the front offices of Americans for Prosperity or Club for Growth, and they walk through the front offices of the American Family Association or Focus on the Family, they would get an equal standing ovation from both sides. And JD, you can attest to the fact that it's tough to do in the Republican grassroots. And that gives Cruz, if he puts a good team around him, a good solid campaign team around him, a chance to capitalize on this environment.
There's another conservative geographically close to Iowa from Wisconsin, Governor Scott Walker. Now, Scott is pretty much of an open borders guy. Correct me if I'm wrong. The odds for him and what would be his appeal?
I think Scott Walker, if we had a party establishment that didn't hate their base, and therefore was bound and determined to shove Jeb Christie down everybody's throats, Scott Walker would be a George W. Bush kind of candidate. He's conservative enough in some areas to win some conservative support. He's establishment enough in other areas, as you mentioned, amnesty, to win establishment support. He's sort of the establishment version of Ted Cruz. He could put together a pretty unique coalition, but I think for him to do that, he needs an establishment that actually wants to beat Democrats and not just beat conservatives.
All right, Steve, let's hold your hand to the fire now. We've talked about Cruz, we've talked about Walker, you mentioned Carson and Huckabee. If you were a betting man, who would you say has the best chance of winning?
It is really early. I know a lot of people like Bobby Jindal a lot more than I think a lot of national media realize. But if I had to guess right now, about 15 months before, 14 months before the caucuses, I would predict the winner of the 2016 Iowa caucuses will be one of the men you just asked me about.
Ah, wow, well, that narrows it down.
Well, it's also, we left off a name that nationally continues to gain attention because he is perhaps the establishment frontrunner, and that is former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. How active is the, quote, establishment in Iowa? Could he still mount an effort that could be successful, especially if there's a splitting of the conservative vote that you were concerned about?
The establishment vote in the Iowa caucuses is always between 18 to 25%. Doesn't go any lower than that, any higher than that. And they'll need to have just one candidate. I'm not sure they'll have that this time, JD. I mean, they're splintered too. Is it Christie? Is it Jeb? Should we rally around someone that conservatives might actually like Scott Walker or Marco Rubio? So I think that the establishment has to figure out their game plan this time, every bit as much as conservatives do. But I don't think there's any chance, a snowball's chance in a very warm place, that Jeb Bush is going to win the Iowa caucuses. I don't see that possible at all. In fact, and I think it's impossible for Chris Christie to win. And so if I think it's impossible for Chris Christie to win, I don't see how Jeb Bush wins the Iowa caucuses. I don't.
30 seconds left. Another Floridian. If Marco Rubio does a mea culpa and resigns from the Gang of Eight, does he have a prayer?
Yes, a prayer. He's still young. I don't know that this is the year for him, but other than amnesty, his record is pretty much as conservative as Ted Cruz on all the other issues, which is why I don't think conservatives will kick him overboard permanently. But I don't know there's a big enough mea culpa for this cycle to overcome being the face of the Gang of Eight. We shall see.
Fair enough. Steve Deace will have you back again. The name of Steve's book, Rules for Patriots, How Conservatives Can Win Again. And there is more to come on America's Forum following this Newsmax Now update.